Yeah, well, Aunt Helen from when, I played, with some of my friends when I was small, where, the people who came, just like the Hispanics cluster now,
Yeah.
the people from the Eastern Europe cluster.
Right, yeah.
So we all lived in West Geneva, most of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, on all the streets, one on 11th Street, one on 12th Street, one on 13th Street, one on 14th Street, a couple on each. But, and so I played with Bernice, who was up the street from us. And we played together. Her mother and my mother, like I told you, Gigi used to collect numbers,
Right.
And so Mrs. Camper would come down with her apron, and she'd pick this apron up, and she'd pull a penny or two out, and she'd tell Gigi to play this number for me for a penny.
Okay, big bet there, okay.
And she didn't have, her husband he was very, tight.
Right.
The money. She hardly had enough money to go to the store, but she'd squirrel away a couple pennies, come down and would play the numbers. Gigi would write up the numbers for her.
Right.
So I played with Bernice, who was my age. Bernice was born in April. I was in January. And I would like to play Bernice, and then one day she got me because I wouldn't play with her all the time.
Right.
And she'd say to me, "You always tell me, Monday I have to play with so-and-so, Tuesday I have to play with so-and-so, Wednesday I have to play with so-and-so, and I can play with you on Thursday."
Wow, Mom.
I don't know who I was playing with.
Right, okay.
But anyhow, so the little boy next door, Junior Turco, he and I would go down, there was the creek, and all the sewage, like I told you, would come out of these big pipes. And we were determined all the time that we were going to block that water coming down, and we'd pile up dirt, and then of course the sewage would come, and it would all, there wasn't raw sewage, but it was like,
Like just junk.
I didn't even know it was sewage until later. So we
Probably
were
better.
always that outlet. But I played with Junior Turco for a long time. We'd play and go down to the creek every day to try to block that that creek. And then I remember one year his mother, I guess, must have invited me over for a birthday. It must have been his birthday. And so I went over, and I must have really gorged on cake. And I remember my mother was ironing when I came home, and I vomited all over the place with this cake. I must have eaten. But Bernice, up the street, we would play together, and we would always play house. And then, we would always, there were these two maiden ladies who lived 2 doors away, and, they always had this face cream and that. And right behind, behind the house was like a little field, and they would burn their trash, and Bernice and I would go and pick it up, and you'd find all these bottles with like cream in it,
Yeah.
And so, but we tried to make perfume, Bernice and I.
Okay.
So we would take along the railroad tracks with these sweet-smelling flowers, and we would squeeze them into water and try to make perfume. And then, of course, we tried to play house, and there was a little shed in her backyard, and it was going to be our kitchen. And we fixed it up, swept it out and all, and Mr. Camper came along and chased us out of there.
Right. Well, at least you had a nice place. She had a nice clean shed.
I know. And then we went into their basement, which was dark. But now
what happened with Aunt Helen? You said that.
Oh, okay. What we did was, that was when I was very young. I can remember that.
But what happened with Aunt Helen?
Well, I'll tell you about it. And then we would sled right behind, Uncle Kaj lived next to us, And right in the alley was a big steep hill.
Okay.
And we would just sled down that little, it was so short.
Right.
It was so steep. And we sledded there a lot.
Good.
And then Aunt Helen would always, she was so good to me. She would always let me tag along with her.
Uh-huh.
Every place she went.
Right.
And so she had this friend in Penn, right where we went to Catholic school there.
Mm-hmm.
Dorothy Walicki, her mother had like a little store where you got chewing gum, candy, and noodles and different things. And they had a piano. And that was a big thing for us to see a piano because, you know, we were so poor.
Poor, right.
And Dorothy could play a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we would play with her. And then not too far from where she lived was Hawkinsmith Company, where Gigi worked pretty much all his life in a foundry.
Mm-hmm.
He really worked hard.
Yeah. I thought he was in the coal mines, no?
He was in Silesia, in Poland.
Oh, he was in the coal mines in Poland.
In Poland.
Oh, for some reason I thought he was in the coal mines here in America.
He worked in a quarry for a while.
And then he worked in the
He
foundry?
might have worked in Tamika's coal mine, yeah.
No, that's
He
what I
did.
thought. Okay. And then he worked in a foundry?
And then he worked in Hawkinsmith the rest of his life in a foundry. He retired for a little while and then went back to work, but it was too much for him.
Oh, okay.
But he was a little ornery too.
Oh, well, that explains a lot.
He had kind of a funny side. But what he did was he made the molds for railroad car wheels.
Okay.
He made those, he would come home, so tired.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I would feel so badly for him, especially the second time around. He'd come home and he couldn't drag himself up the steps. And I didn't know what to do for him. And I'd say, Dad, do you want me to do something? Can I do something for you? And he'd say, can you go and get my slippers, you know? And so I'd go and get his slippers for him. And that was the limit of what he could do. But he worked all night long. He would catch the last streetcar to Penn, and then he would come home in the morning, take the streetcar home in the morning.
Okay.
He was exhausted. He was so old and he was so tired. But, Dad and I always talk about how he never really had good dinners.
Yeah.
Baba made soup. He ate soup every day.
Yeah, wow.
He ate it. But there's protein in it. She would make it with soup bones out of the marrow. So he would have one night soup with rice, one night soup with noodles, and then for his lunch, she would put some butter on some bread, and she would give him, I remember her making cocoa for him. A jar of cocoa she'd give for him, and he should put cocoa and milk, heat the milk, put cocoa and sugar in. And that was his lunch. But he said they would have like a break, and these guys would sit against the wall on the floor, and he said they would get matches. He would get a match and light it and sneak up to one of these guys who was sleeping, and he would light this match, and this match would burn down. And he said the guy would then jump up. You know, what do they have to do for entertainment?
Right. Yeah.
But, okay, so Aunt Helen would take us and we'd play with Dorothy Walicki downstairs. But you know what we used to do, and of course, I didn't know at the time that it was dangerous. Stanley, are you awake?
Yes.
Okay. Hawkinsmith had all this, Stanley, whenever they did the railroad cars, would they have had, Dad couldn't sleep well last night. He was having trouble falling asleep. Stanley, look up to me and how about talking? Right here I am, right here.
All right.
Okay. Now, whenever they do the railroad cars, do they have like filings or something that, come off the railroad car, like, extra material, metal or something.
I don't know whether they turned those after
After they're
they were molded
yeah.
or what. I would have to imagine that somebody turned them, but whether that
Well,
was
you
done
know,
by
this-
Hawkins Smith or
The scrap from that, they had like a mountain of it behind. And then Helen and I
Quite
and Dorothy
possible.
Willicke would go on top of this thing, and it is soft as it was, we could have easily,
It's going in.
but you didn't have all these precautions that you do now.
Yeah.
When I talked to Uncle Contra one time, he said he used to be able to go down and see Dad in the foundry. Now you'd have to have a hard hat on,
Yeah.
goggles,
Yeah,
get written permission.
yeah. You couldn't even go if you were a kid, so.
He couldn't, he said he used to go down and see Dad working
Yeah, well,
down in the farm. So we used to go up on top and we used to think we were on a volcano in Hawaii. And we used to pretend this one movie was out there. We used to pretend that we were, there was the ocean below us.
oh. Well, that's what
I
kids
know.
do, they
But then,
pretend.
as we got older, when I was in high school, Aunt Helen, she used to work for Felder's, which was the in place for people to go for lunch.
Okay,
They had Mrs. Felder. If you think the Jewish people just work with their brains, they work with their backs too.
right.
Mrs. Felder, she made the best pies, and they made them fresh every single day. Their pie alamos with fresh fruit, berries, oh, glory was they good. If I could only make the pie crust like it. She made them every day. She'd have, and they would, Mr. Felder was from a town in the Ukraine, nearby where Mrs. Orange, that Mrs. Orange
Yeah.
came, and so he hired Mrs. Orange, and he hired Mrs. Orange from over the hill, and they all worked in the kitchen helping make pies and that. But Aunt Helen, every lunch hour, she would go to Felder's and she would wait. She was a waitress.
Okay,
And she would work her lunch hours. So she had a lot of tip money. She would have, and then she would work weekends. And then I worked there. I watched Mrs. Felder's daughter's son, Billy Felder. I would watch him during the lunch hour because they were so busy. And all the people who were the people who owned businesses always came to Felder's for lunch. So Aunt Helen and I, we would, the thing to do even in high school, I know I was awfully young doing it, but we would go weekends to these dance halls.
okay.
And the crowd would go maybe 6 months or a year to one, say 6 months to a year, they'd go to the Polish Hall and would, dance there, they'd have a band there. And then the crowd would shift like to the Americanization Hall, which was an Italian hall. And this is where it was funny. And then it would go to the Blue Room, like out in Claridge. And then to the Fire Hall in Westmoreland City. It would just shift.
Okay.
And we would go and, we'd get a table and the people would let you come in. You didn't have to pay for anything because they knew the guys would come and they would buy the drinks.
Oh, okay.
And that's how they made their money. I mean, we'd buy a soft drink, Coke or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we'd dance, and it was common for, girls to dance with each other.
Yeah.
But Aunt Helen was so ornery. Do you want me to tell her?
Yes, Mom, yes.
Aunt Helen was so ornery. And there was this guy, Nick Page, and he was short, but he was the best dancer, polka dance and that. But there was something a little bit, he didn't have a girlfriend or anything. There was something a little bit, I'm going to say strange about him.
Okay.
That he wasn't like that. So the one weekend came, and we were polka dancing, and Aunt Helen, God, I don't even remember if she ran it by me or not. She got a big hat pin. Yes.
And what did she do with the hat pin?
When she came by Nick Page, she stuck him in the dupa with a hat pin.
Oh my gosh, Mom.
And did he get mad?
Well, of course he got mad.
You know, he knew right
You
away
should
it
have,
was.
you should have been happy about it.
He knew right away that Aunt Helen
Oh,
did
did
it.
it?
And he stopped dancing, and he got her. He didn't see, you know, he said, poor she denied it.
Oh.
And then another weekend, we were there dancing. These two incidents were at the Americanization Hall, and I can remember it to this day. There was this very good-looking guy who used to come. You know, they used to come from all over the place. There was a place uptown, up in Jeanette, where we used to go square dancing every week. And all the boys from the guys from the farms would come in.
Oh.
Uh-huh. And they were nice.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and we used to square dance. I
Aw.
used to know all the square dances.
Yeah, that's fun.
Okay, so this guy down at the Americanization Hall, and then Helen, he was good looking. So he danced with her. I guess it was he must have danced with her. He talked with us. And she offered him a piece of gum. And it was Phenamine.
Now that's a laxative, right?
He chewed the gum. He went fishing the next day. We went the following Saturday to the Americanization Hall. He came in. We were seated at a table. He came in and he looked all over the place. And then he found Aunt Helen. And he came straight into her and he said, "What did you give me last week?" And she would have said, "What?"
Oh, yeah. Miss Innocent.
And he said, "You know what happened?" She gave him Phenamine.
Oh, terrific. Wow, okay, never a dull moment with Aunt Helen, right?
There's more truth than poetry.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, gosh.
So we didn't
All
do
right.
too much. We used to go dancing over the weekends. And,
Okay. Well, you know, we wanted to ask about once we came along.
Mm-hmm.
And
What?
we wanted to know about the time period after we all were born. Because we
Like-
went through like the 50s. But then we
Oh,
moved.
I thought you wanted to know about our childhood.
Well, yeah, but we also wanted to know like moving into the 60s and 70s because that's still ancient history for her.
Yeah, but you can tell her that.
Well, no, we're interested from your perspective what it was like raising kids in that kind of a crazy, I mean, the 60s were pretty tumultuous.
No,
I mean,
you
was
were
there-
so young.
Yeah, but in the 70s we weren't.
No, in the
I mean, what was it like raising kids, basically, when we were young? I mean, is there anything that you can remember that really stands
I
out?
think we probably experienced what most people did.
Okay.
You know, the kids rebel a little bit sometimes, you know, and we just, you know, just didn't want any of that, and, you know, we just didn't have any. I mean, I would have to say, by and large, we got by okay.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
yeah, we all
you
turned
know,
out
there
good.
was a little experimenting here, but, you know, maybe I didn't know. Of course, you know, you guys think it's so cute to come back and say, "Oh, we did this, that, and the other thing."
Oh, well, now that
And your
sounds
children are
familiar.
going to say the same
Oh,
thing, tell you when you're
Are
older
going to? They've already.
what they've done.
They've already.
I know. But
Excuse me, what have we done here?
We'll talk about it later.
But you know what, the thing is, that's okay. You know, the important stuff.
Yeah, we turned out okay.
had, and
Do you have any amusing anecdotes, like there
Remember
something that you can, what?
the one time Aunt Ellen got her head stuck between the two.
Yeah,
The two
yeah,
posts.
any amusing anecdotes,
About-
like about the kids, like when Ellen got stuck in the trash can,
Oh, glory.
and then she put her
Her
knee in between
Yes,
the two,
over on
in,
Caledonia
yeah,
Road
she
in
was-
Howell, Michigan.
yeah,
You guys were playing hide and seek,
right.
and she went and hid in the trash can, and she got stuck.
Well,
Did I have to call an emergency?
well, who found her in the trash can? Did she just start making noise and yelling?
I can't remember. Dad wasn't around then.
Okay.
You know what, it seems like I had to call an emergency maybe to get her out. But I know that when she stuck her knee between those slats on that porch,
The deck, yeah.
I thought, nothing doing, your knee's coming out now before it swells.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it
And you
starts.
just tugged it till it came out, right?
Yes, I got that booger out. I'll tell you, there was no way that she was going to be stuck in there this time.
So what do you have fun